Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a while, obviously. Uh, I've had a few videos on the back burner, and it's just that time of year where, we take a break or we focus on some other things or we're just simply lazy, which I could say about myself. But then this piece of news came out with the James Bond franchise, and you know what will go down as the most pivotal uh, shift in the franchise in 60 years. But basically, the big news from a few days ago is that we finally know what's going to be happening with Bond after quite a few years, I think almost 4 years now, of complete dead air. No casting, no production updates, feuds between the Broccoli family, who have been the creative overseers of the franchise, right? They've been the producers. It's been in the family line for 60 years, and now they finally, yeah, sold out to Amazon MGM and passing over all creative control. I guess the world is not enough is a foolish sentiment and not a family motto, because I'm not trying to disrespect this family and what they've given us. But the main concern is, for a lot of us, it's going to be the oversaturation of content, and that what has been a family business is now not that at all. And it's being passed over to uh, essentially the companies which have been taking over, tech companies, Amazon specifically. And yeah, there's so many jokes. Jeff Bezos, who will probably not, at least I would hope not, he's not going to be having that much time to put all his creative stamp on things, but he went to Twitter and already asked the masses, who would you like cast as the next James Bond? Maybe that's just like a cute thing he did, but I wouldn't put it past that they're actually going to have the complete 180 approach, which the Broccolis, Michael G. Wilson, would have never have done. They never bended to what the audience thought they wanted. The audience doesn't always know what they want or need until they're given something new and fresh and unexpected. And I just feel it's going to get very diluted. I feel like Bezos, this is the joke. It's like he could be the Bond villain, right? And now his company owns it. And yeah, it's disheartening, is honestly how I feel about it all. Really, this is just going to be an opinion of someone who would call themselves a diehard Bond fan. I was born in the heels of GoldenEye being released. I grew up with the video games, but the films were like my jam. In the house we had the box set, which ranged from Doctor No all the way up till The World Is Not Enough. And I been watching them from such an early age. They were always on in our house, to where I couldn't even tell you which one was the first one I watched. To me, all the actors who played Bond were special and I adored them. Most people will say about the Craig era, it's divisive and there's some of the greatest and some of the worst. But for me, since Casino Royale, it just kind of went down. And where I really start to feel the franchise dying, and I don't want to be melodramatic, but there's just too many obvious puns and correlations to what's happened with this character. Because I remember Casino Royale coming out in '06, so I was 10. And, watching that in the theater, I remember very vividly that feeling of, wow, Bond is in great hands, and what a fresh, it felt rejuvenated, not just by reintroducing a new actor, but having him earn his stripes as Bond, and only by the end, after what he's gone through, a very emotional, journey in that first film. That's the end. He's deserving of the character, and I didn't think it was heavy-handed. I thought it was very tasteful. It was just a great film on its own. And I thought, wow, that was brilliant to show how Bond began to then become, imagining him being that character which we've all loved across all the actors and their tenures. It was brilliant, and I thought sitting in the theater, holy shit, like this is it. This is from here on, it's going to be fantastic. And you were just excited for him to continue on more singular adventures that were inconsequential to the next, really. Bond was always, the franchise, they were always very tasteful with how much they tied each film to the other, rather not at all. But there were some sprinkles of, and there were just moments, obviously, with his former marriage and the tragedy there. But then they took the Craig franchise and they gave him an arc. And they did ridiculous things, which we all know and loathe for the most part. But come on, like, you're gonna tell me it's not the stupidest thing when they make Blofeld his half brother? They just made the world so much smaller by tying the films together. And then, what I thought was the greatest atrocity of all. And again, I know it's very dramatic, but that last film, No Time to Die, it just didn't feel like James Bond to me. Not just by the act of killing him, but how Daniel was already playing the part. He just reminded me of like Harrison Ford, coming back and being grumpy of the role. But this is not to blame the actor or what ended up happening with that film. I just don't even, pretty much that film, and after Casino Royale, I don't really, it's been dropping off for me to where I don't have a problem just disassociating what came after Casino Royale. Even a film like Skyfall, which ended up being the biggest monetary success of the franchise. For that reason, it was something more accessible, I guess, and it brought Bond into the new world, showing him as kind of a relic, like an old dog, arguably maybe too early in Craig's tenure as Bond. But that one, I just felt like by the end especially, it took a bit of a departure. It wasn't what I loved about Bond flicks. You have to remember, a lot of people in my generation didn't grow up with Bond like I did. So he is a product of his time, you could say. He's very much associated with the 60s and after the Cold War era. And so I understand. And listen, every decade or so, many times, at least 5 different times, there were years where they had to reinvent Bond. But it always stayed in the family protection and best interests. And I heard even Cubby Broccoli was telling his kids, whatever you do, don't sell it off to someone else. And that's what happened the other day, right? It's been sold off. And I think it's going to be, whereas they've had to adapt and reinvent Bond in the past, I don't know if this is just because of nostalgia that I'm still able to connect the franchise as a whole. But now I feel like this will clearly be the dividing line, the death of an era. And some people are going to say, the Craig era is going to age like fine wine, and that arc and him dying, it was just so poetic, right, to what's going to be, in my opinion, the inevitable oversaturation of Bond. And people are going to much more often than not disassociate from what were these tentpole films, strictly theater experiences, to, yes, we may get movies still, but there's going to be spin-offs, there's going to be an oversaturation, too much involvement of fans in a way, and much more behind the scenes, which people can appreciate. And I understand why other people on the platform of YouTube, like Dave Zaritsky or Calvin Dyson, huge fans, obviously, goes without saying, but they're positive, and I respect that totally, because one, a lot of us are just excited for something new, for something to happen. But at the same time, I say, like, okay, yeah, what else are they going to be but positive? I hate to say I knew it, but it just justifies what I've been feeling for nearly 20 years now of what they've done with the franchise. And even then, it was Broccoli creative control. Barbara, you know, she was stepping more into the role after Bronson, well, during Bronson, but then Craig for sure. And yeah, I'm not going to say they could do no wrong, but now in the hands of a tech company who is so about content and exploiting a franchise, an IP which was famous and prideful in their distinction that they didn't bend and just spoil us. So that's my thoughts on it. And yeah, goes without saying, all the respect and best wishes to the family for moving on. And I'm sure like what they've gone through after all these years, it's a lot, and it must be exhausted. They may be exhausted just creatively. That's totally understandable. I'll always have those films and that feeling, but I'm just telling you, like, I was really sad. And I'm usually not about like these things because who cares? But this one just it's been in my life for as long as I remember, and now it's just the end of an era. And that's what that feeling is. And I'm sure we're going to get announcements soon, and people will have more content to talk about. There'll be the people who, maybe recently I've been talking a lot about Disney Star Wars, because this event is very much like when George Lucas sold Star Wars for $4 billion. And you can't directly compare Amazon and Disney. Some people would say Disney would have been, especially knowing what we know now, how they've perverted Star Wars, that would have been a lot bigger of a disaster. Amazon, there's still hope for some quality. I don't know, from the track record that I've exposed myself to, what their product in film and television, like they have proved nothing to me to where I feel completely secure. But what's funny is my last video, which was over a month ago now, was on The Man with the Golden Gun, the first Bond video I've ever made, and it randomly came to me. Well, it wasn't random. With my girlfriend Ashley, we recently rewatched all the Bond films, which I haven't done in order in a very long time. So that too just adds to the synchronicity of this news and the emotions, I guess. It's fresh, is all I want to say. But we watched, of course, Man with the Golden Gun. It's not one of my favorites, but it came to me a theory of, what if that's James Bond's dream? What if that's a Bondian dream, a nightmare, a night terror that he's having? And so check that video out. It's there. Yeah, I like making videos like that, as opposed to these new stuff. They're very few and far between. I don't consider myself, goes without saying, I don't consider myself a reliable news source of film, but occasionally something like this pops up and I'm compelled to talk about it. But I feel like maybe I'll be compelled to do more Bond videos like the one I did last month, because that was a lot of fun. Those are the kinds of, I'd rather take my time and work on something like that, which ends up being more fulfilling and fun for both sides. But yeah, so I'm very curious as to what you guys think, and comment please and let me know where you stand. I know it's all over the place. It's huge, and it's shaken the community in every direction, and now we're just waiting. So in the meantime, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and want to see more, maybe on similar topics of Bond, then subscribe, and I'll see you later. Thanks.